In this video, we're going to take a look at snowpack, which is a bundler similar to Webpack. We'll look at some of the specifics of how it works and why it does things certain ways and why you might want to use it. And then we'll go through a walkthrough of how to use snowpack. We'll look at some code and look at what the dev process is like with snowpack. And then afterwards, we can talk about some catches and some things that you might want to be aware of and when I think I would like to use snowpack. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Snowpack, what does it actually bundle? So this is, like I said, this is different from Webpack in a few different ways. And so it's pretty easy to reference Webpack and talk about how this contrasts with Webpack. So I'll be talking about that throughout here. So what snowpack actually bundles is the dependencies only. And specifically ES dependencies, ES modules. So it is restricted to your node modules that are ES modules. And so therefore stuff that's not like CommonJS or UMD or AMD modules, those are not going to work with snowpack. So that's one little downside. Fortunately, there are lots of ES modules, and over time we're going to see more packages and more dependencies that are transitioning to use ES. So this is going to be less of an issue over time. But right now, things like React or Lodash or even jQuery, if you're using jQuery, these things might be issues for you using snowpack. What it doesn't bundle, it's not going to bundle your source code. So again, this is different from Webpack, where Webpack is going to bundle everything together, your node modules and your source code. Snowpack just bundles your dependencies, your node modules, and it does not bundle your images or your CSS. And so where in Webpack, you would be able to do something like import mystyles.css. That's really not a built-in JavaScript functionality, and that's actually like a Webpack loader. So if you're used to stuff like that, that's very bundler specific, like importing images or CSS, then you're not going to get that kind of stuff with snowpack. It's much more lightweight than that. So when does it actually bundle? So after each time you install a package, you will run snowpack to basically take that package and bundle it up into its own specific file that's produced from there. So you run npm install my package, and then you'll do npx snowpack, or if you have a specific script that you have on your package.json, you could run that as well. So again, this differs from Webpack, where in Webpack, you're basically bundling anytime anything changes. So if your code changes, if you add different assets, if you add a package, you're going to be bundling all the time because it is also bundling your source code and everything else that's involved. But with snowpack, since it only bundles your dependencies, you really only have to bundle after you install a dependency. So this is one of the big advantages of snowpack, and I'll mention this again in a second, but it's that you just kind of bundle it once and then you forget about it. You don't have to bundle again. So how does it bundle? Well, it bundles the modules independently into their own files. So if we take a look down here, it's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio here with this node modules folder. We have CSZ, Preact head tag, and then it's going to create its own web modules folder where it creates a single file for each of these dependencies. And so all of the code and sub-dependencies for each of these node modules will be bundled into this web modules folder. And we'll see that more in depth as we go through our walkthrough here with the code. Now, how that compares to Webpack is that Webpack is going to take all of your dependencies and all of your source code, and it's going to bundle it into a single JavaScript file and a single CSS file. Now, depending on your settings and how you've configured everything, you can do it otherwise, but typically you'll see a single bundle.js file. And there are advantages to the way that snowpack does it, which is doing a 1-to-1 thing here with node modules and web modules files within there. So why snowpack? Like I mentioned before, better development flow. You're not bundling on every save of your source files, so this can improve your development speed. Sometimes bundling can take 5, 10, 15 seconds, maybe more, depending on your configuration, but it can be a lot faster with Snowpack since you're not bundling on every source code change that you make. You're only bundling after you install modules. The other thing is caching is since you are bundling individual packages into individual files, like I showed in, let's go back here. All of these are going to be staying the same each time. And so anytime you push out a change to your source code, your users are going to have all these things cached. Okay, so these things will stay cached, and they really only have to reload your source file, your actual source code. So things will end up being a lot faster for your users, and that's going to pay off for you as well. Okay, so let's go through our walkthrough now. I have this empty npm package here with just like a basic HTML file, and it's importing this index.js. One thing to note here is it's important to specify a type as module for your script that you're importing. Otherwise, it's going to have issues there, and you won't be able to, let's say if you don't use the type equals module, then you won't be able to import stuff like this. Okay, so we've got our file here, and we should see this JavaScript running once we run this here. Okay, so one thing to note, with Webpack, normally you'd have like a Webpack dev server. Snowpack doesn't have its own dev server, so you'll just have to install a third-party one. So for us, we're going to do live server here. So we'll install that as a development dependency. And once this is installed, then we can run this and see what our index.html file is going to show for us. So let's go ahead and do npx live server. And it's going to open up here, and we just have this div that has some text. Okay, so that's how that's going to look for right now. Now let's install a dependency. So first we'll install Snowpack. And now that we have Snowpack installed, we can install the dependency that we care about. In this case, I will just use something called change case, which is just going to change the case of a string. So in here, we can install this, and then while that's installing, I'll go ahead and say my string is going to be, let's say, Mamba mentality. All right, so I've got my string, and maybe before we even use this change case module, we'll do something like document dot, let's just update the text within this guy. So this is going to be our no ID, get element by ID, and we'll want to use no ID. And then we'll say inner text equals my string. Okay, so let's make sure that that works. So if we have this here, then we see Mamba mentality. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and create a new terminal window here. And now what we'll do is we do have our, let's double check our package.json. We've installed this dependency. Now what we need to do is we need to snowpack this dependency. So all we have to do is run npx snowpack. And now we can see that it created this web modules folder. Okay, so I have my change case.js, and then I have this import map.json. And so this is going to just tell us where exactly the file is for that dependency. Okay, so now one thing that's different here is as I import this module, let's say this is going to be, I think it's actually without any brackets, any braces. So this is going to be change case from, so normally you'd say like just change case like this, right? Well, without doing any sort of magical Webpack and like without bundling my source code. We need to import this from a file itself, so from an exact file. So let's see, it says is declared, but its value is never used. That's fine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we can just use it right here just in case, so that it doesn't throw us any errors. Okay, but the important thing here is that we want to actually import that file itself. So we'll go to web modules and then we'll do changecase.js. And so now that that is going, we'll need to restart our server, so it's going to pick up our web modules. Gotcha. So we do need braces here. And what we're going to do actually is so one thing that's helpful with this snowpack is we can actually see the source code of the individual dependencies that we're using. So here I got import not found default. So basically because I had no brackets here, I was expecting some sort of default, a default package that was being exported. And now I'm like, okay, well, what packages are within, or what actual functions are within this change case? Well, I can just go over here to change case and look at the bottom, and I can use camel case transform. I can use all these things, and it's really easy for me to see what functions this is exporting. Whereas with something like Webpack, this would all be bundled into one giant file, and it would be pretty difficult actually to see what functions are here. So let's just go ahead and use camel case here. Let's do this, and we'll drop camel case right there. So now that that is done, the change is detected. So it just does a live update on this server that I'm using. So it didn't have to bundle my code. Again, it just runs it straight up. And then here you can see that Mamba Mentality is, it's in camel case. So I have my console log here. I'm seeing exactly what I should see. And I didn't have to bundle my own code. I didn't have to wait for any sort of changes to happen down here. It just automatically detected the change, and the live server that I happened to be running updated it right away. So that is a quick rundown and brief walkthrough of how to use snowpack. If I wanted to install another dependency, right, I would just do npm install, like my dependency, and then after that I would just do npx snowpack again, right? And then once that happens, then I would see it immediately show up in my web modules folder. So it's pretty cool. You can see like exactly what's going on. There's not a lot of magic that's happening. There is additional configuration that you can do if you'd like to. Let's jump back into some of the final points that I was going to talk about. So some notes about snowpack. The development server is sold separately, just like I mentioned. I was starting to talk about configurations. So you can use Babel support. If you'd like to, you can configure that in. So similar to Webpack, where that's going to take some configuration for you to do. It's kind of the same thing here with snowpack, where you just have to configure that and make it happen. I mentioned this before, you don't have CSS or image import available to you. So like if I had a CSS file and I wanted to do like import my style.css, right? This wouldn't work, because typically when you see that, that's because people are using Webpack and they're using a certain loader within Webpack to make that happen. I already mentioned it only supports ES modules, so you just have to be aware of that. So when would I use it? I would use it in side projects for sure, because it makes things so fast. As long as my side project is using purely ES modules, because that's going to be a deal breaker. You'll see if you try to install something, let's say I'm going to uninstall, what was it? Change case. Let's say I uninstall that. And now if I were to npm install jQuery, so I mentioned that before. And then once I save this and that's installed, now if I do npx snowpack, then we're going to see that there are no ESM dependencies found. Okay, so even though I've installed jQuery in here and that's kind of a mess. But even though I've installed jQuery in there, Snowpack can't do anything with it because it's not an ESM dependency. So make sure if you're going to use it that you have purely ES modules at hand. If you are curious about what dependencies are ES modules, you can go to Pika.dev, I think. Yeah, and they have a registry here. So these are the same people. It's kind of like a similar project. They're coming at this thing from different angles. But if you just search the registry here, it'll tell you basically which ones are ES modules and which ones are not. So let's get back to this. I think that was the last thing I wanted to share. But yeah, I think overall this is a very promising project. If you are using ES modules only as your dependencies, like, it would be great for side projects. I'm really excited to start using this. And it's really cool to see how it's different from Webpack and how it's different from other bundlers. So hopefully that gives you a good rundown of Snowpack. Let me know if I missed anything or if I got anything wrong. I'm curious to hear your opinions as well on Snowpack or other bundlers, how this compares with other bundlers like Rollup or Parcel that I haven't used as much. But hopefully this helps out, and we will see you in the next video.